All right, welcome. It is 5 o'clock California time here at the at Thomas Fogarty Vineyards. We're down in the cellar. I'm Tommy Fogarty, and I've got Nathan Candler here with us. And today we are going to taste through 4 wines from our spring release. Wines that some of you have, some of you are about to get, and of course are available to everybody. Hopefully there's some folks here that have been joining us on our Friday evening, also at 5 o'clock, sort of virtual tasting that we do, and we're sort of picking wines not quite at random for that, but it's really been interesting and fun, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback. I'm assuming we have some returnees from that, and probably some folks that haven't joined us for that, but have their club distribution with them today. So welcome everybody. Nathan, you want to talk about the wines we're going to taste and maybe say something about them? We'll taste through them.
Yeah, hey, thank you everybody for joining us again. It's a great pleasure to taste through 4 releases from the 17 vintage, the 2017 Portola Springs Chardonnay, our inaugural release of a sort of a block designated Chardonnay from the Langley Hill Vineyard. It's called the Cristina Vineyard. You are probably some of the first people outside a few wine critics that are going to be tasting this wine with us today. So it's kind of a cool thing we can share together. That's comes from a special section of the vineyard in Langley Hill, and it made really exceptional wine in 17. We're also going to taste 17 Windy Hill Pinot, which is our youngest estate vineyard that we've replanted here at the winery, and 17 Mindego Ridge, our neighbors to the west out in La Honda, Dave and Stacy Golnick. They're super fantastic vineyard planted out on Alpine Road. So we're going to go through those 4 wines. And I think we will start with Windy Hill. Tommy, is that what you?
Let's do that. Let's start with Windy Hills.
So 2017 Windy Hill Vineyard. This is our highest elevation Pinot Noir vineyard here at the winery. These young vines were planted in 2012. This is a really rocky section of our vineyards, and is probably one of the most windswept as well. So it's quite an extreme climate. Again, this was replanted in 2012. There are 3 selections of Pinot Noir from kind of the more older historical kind of grouping of selections. So there's some Swan, some Calera, and some Mount Eden Pinot Noir planted in. And this is probably the densest vineyard that we farm. So the number of vines per acre is quite high here. I find this wine to have an aromatic signature that is, for me, quite distinct, and I can identify it pretty easily. It's really got this kind of savory, really kind of bright floral, really kind of dark red fruited character. I feel like in a lot of years, Tommy, this is one of your favorite wines.
It is. I think I was saying this on Friday. I often can't say, oh, this is my favorite vineyard of this vintage, or it changes kind of a lot, but consistently I'm loving Windy Hill in the last several vintages. One thing, some of it is definitely emotional, psychological, but it's so fascinating to me that this is the only vineyard we've ever replanted, and we really replanted. I mean, when we went in there, we tore the old vines out, got rid of them, chipped them up. They're elsewhere now. Amended the soil, replanted different rootstock, different clonal material, different everything. The vineyard still tastes like the vineyard. It's kind of a it's validation for all this like talk, seemingly hocus pocusy talk about terroir. But if you try Windy Hill from 07, 08, 11, or 10 rather was the last vintage before the replant, it tastes a lot like this. It's really neat.
This wine is one of the Pinot Noirs that we often use a high percentage of whole clusters in. So it has that rhizodic floral spicy kind of character to the wine. It's really fresh. You know, it's quite low in alcohol, so it's not a heavy wine at all. It clocks in right at about 12% alcohol. So it's sort of light on its feet, but still has quite a bit of intensity. And I think as these young vines continue to mature, the wine's only going to get better. This vineyard, has been farmed but not certified organically since the beginning. So we've been doing some really cool stuff farming the vineyard using cover crops, compost, tea, really trying to kind of work on the health of the soil, kind of build that up. And we have to irrigate the young vines as we kind of bring them along in their life. But I think in 17, this may have only gotten one irrigation. And we're pretty close to farming this vineyard without any irrigation at all. So it's been really cool for me. I think it's the only vineyard that I've planted and still continue to work with. So I've worked with the vineyard every year of its life. So it's been really rewarding and kind of an enriching experience to kind of see this from the developmental stage and now, seeing some of the first wines come out of there. I think the sky's the limit for Windy Hill. If you guys have any questions at home, if you want to pop them under the Q&A section, I think these things always work better as a back and forth rather than us lecturing to you. So feel free to, at any time, the chat sometimes will work too, but the Q&A is the easiest for us. Just pop them in there. Anything about how the wine's made, how it's farmed, the vineyard, something about the way it tastes to you. I think in general, the 17 Pinot Noirs may need a little bit more age than some of our more recent vintages, but the 17 Windy Hill, I think, is in a really nice place.
Somebody asks why we replanted the vineyard, and it's a great question. Vineyards, as everybody knows, vine age is sort of sought after. There's no question in my mind. The older vines get, maybe the less vigorous they are, the less productive they are in terms of yield and all this, but they really develop some amazing subtleties and some real distinct, intense characteristics. The analogy I use is if you want somebody to help you carry a refrigerator up 3 flights of stairs, you call a 20-year-old or a couple of 20-year-olds. If you want somebody to tell you what it was like to fly a B-17 over the English Channel with an oxygen mask freezing up and trying to save the free world, you need to talk to like a 90-year-old. So but the 90-year-old can't help you carry the mattress or the refrigerator up the flight of stairs. So vine age is wonderful, but every vineyard is like if you restore an old car or you make a work of art, you remodel a kitchen or build a house. When you're done, you're happy with it, you're proud of it, people compliment you on it, but you're always thinking to yourself, there's one damn thing that I wish I'd done differently. I really wish I could go back and redo that. People paint these poetic pictures of how vineyards are so amazing and they're perfect and so much thought went in. That vineyards are always sorry, we have a vicious animal that's just entered the building. Duchamp is trying to chase him out. Vineyards are the same. When you're done, there's always a couple things you wish you'd done differently. And Windy Hill had a couple of really fatal flaws. The biggest one was the row orientation was perpendicular to the direction of wind travel from the ocean. So we were getting blasted by wind. And then the springtime, because it's the highest elevation area and it's right between 2 areas of rising terrain, it would just get hammered. And we had a lot of issues with crop loss and bad things happening in the spring. And we wanted to redo it for that reason. And then we also had a chance to put in a solar array to go to solar power. And by replanting with denser spacing, we number of vines and got a solar array out of it, plus got the orientation right. That's kind of why. Anything else to add there, Nathan?
I think you hit the nail on the head. There's sort of an associated question. How do we decide on the clonal selection? And we chose to use what are kind of colloquially known as California heritage selections. So these are selections of Pinot Noir, kind of have more history here in California rather than being something that originally came. I mean, everything, all these selections came from France originally, but these are selections that have been in California for a good bit of time. They seem to ripen later. You know, around the time where we planted this in 2011 and 12, Dijon clones were quite popular. It's a it's a set of selections from the University of Dijon in France, and they tend to ripen quite early in California. And we saw, in general, that things seem to be a bit warmer than they have been in the past, and things were ripening faster. So usually pushing that ripeness window back a bit works quite well. And the Dijon clones seem to be moving the opposite direction. And plus, really, you know, in the aughts, you know, the whole decade of the first decade of the 21st century, I feel like everyone was planting Dijon clones. So for us, it was a way to get more diversity into some of the Pinot Noir material we were working with. So it's a great question. Let's move on to the second wine, the Mindego Ridge Pinot Noir.
So this is, I'll bring up the best laid plans of mice and men here, but we had originally intended to have this be a pretty short tasting, but these bring them, and it's kind of the point of this whole thing. So just ask away, and we'll get it all covered for sure.
So this is 2017 Mindego Ridge Vineyard Pinot Noir. This is not an estate vineyard for us. It's a vineyard that we share with the owners, Dave and Stacy Golnick. They have their own wine label called Mindego Ridge. Their wine is made up in the Napa Valley by Aaron Jordan, the former winemaker at Turley, and now who has Fela. So we share the vineyard with them. We take, you know, actually a little bit more than half the fruit some years, and then this single vineyard designate comes from their young vineyard. Their vineyard was planted in 2009, so it's a few years older than Windy Hill. It is out on Alpine Road, out in La Honda, which is to the west of us. So if you've been to Fogarty, hopefully most of you have, you know, we sort of sit on the crest of the mountain, and our vineyards sort of fall to the east. They're well on the west side of the crest, much lower in elevation. This vineyard, I think, sits, around 900 feet in elevation. It is only, 5 or 6 miles from the Pacific, maybe 7 miles. It is a perfect south-facing hillside, so it acts like a solar panel, essentially. The days, the sun warms it up. It's quite warm. But the temperature at night, because of the marine air penetrating through this little east-west valley that it kind of sits in, it gets really cold at night. So what we call the diurnal shift, so the change in temperature from day to night, is quite dramatic. That kind of helps. This is some of usually the highest alcohol Pinot Noir produced, but also conversely, which is kind of weird, also one of the highest acid Pinot Noirs we produce. So it's just a wine of great intensity. It's one of the few places that I've worked with Pinot Noir in the Santa Cruz Mountains where there's clay in the soil as well. And I think that gives the wine some weight. So it tends to be, well, not a heavy Pinot Noir, certainly one that has great intensity and a good deal of body. And it too, to me, has a pretty distinct character of kind of really electric fruit. I think almost like pomegranate. So it's sort of like really dark red fruit. Tommy, what do you think of when you taste Mindego Ridge Pinot?
Well, it kind of goes back to again, those Friday stream tastings that we do. Check them out. You can go back and watch them from the last few weeks as well. But we compared Mindego Ridge and one of the Corralitos vineyards that we make single vineyard Pinot Noir from. And this wine is just classic sort of North Skyline. It's got a little bit more ruggedness. It's a little more like lumberjacky is one of the characteristics, one of the words I use. But Nate says there's nothing heavy about it. There's nothing ponderous about it, but really a structured wine. The acidity gives it like that Noirs, southern end of the Santa Cruz Mountains don't have. and it's close enough to our estate. We've been, you know, working with years now, Rapley Trail and Windy Hill, which we just tasted, and Razorback, that it's distinctly North Skyline Santa Cruz Mountain, but it's quite different from ours. Some of ours have this like almost Middle Eastern Moroccan spiciness to them. This is a bit more red fruited. I think Nathan used the word pomegranate, but it's darker and intense relative to like some of the southern Santa Cruz Mountain vineyards, which I also really like. But we started working with these guys how long ago, Nathan?
So we made their estate wine for them in 2012, and then we purchased our first fruit in 13.
Yeah, I mean, I love working with this vineyard. Every year I'm really happy with the wine that comes out of here, and it has to be said, it's a very popular wine. A lot of our direct to consumer customers really enjoy it. They like it a lot. I'm happy we're making it.
Yeah, I think the 17 vintage, a lot of the thoughts of the vintage are really, people's head goes to two events. One was the incredible heat wave that came at Labor Day, and then the later in the season was the tragic wildfires in the North Coast. And this was picked in between those two events. This is one of the few Pinot Noir vineyards that harvest was basically ripened well after that heat spike. So the wine still has really good freshness, good bright character. You know, again, I think all the 17 Pinots will probably really benefit from a year or two in the bottle. They are really vibrant and kind of tightly wound right now, but I think they're going to be beautiful wines with a few years of bottle age. If there are, we have a question. So the question is, how does 17 compare to other vintages? Unfortunately, Paul, you're tasting 2015. 2015 is
about that.
Yeah, 2015 is a rare wine. There's only 3 barrels of that made, and that's from the lowest yields we've ever seen up here. So there's a great deal more intensity to that wine. This wine has still has kind of the vibrancy, I think, that of that 15, but maybe just in a little more kind of streamlined package. I think that there's really good verve to this wine. It's when I say light on its feet, it's not a light-bodied wine, but it's just got a lot of like freshness, great intensity, and I think this is one of the more red-fruited Mindego Pinots we've made. I think sometimes some of the blocks in that vineyard can lean a little bit more towards the black-fruited character. And this wine seems a bit more red and really vibrant and kind of has this really like succulent, fresh fruit character with a little bit of kind of sneaky, firm tannin in its youth right now. So I look to get into this wine maybe ideally in another year or two. But great question, Paul. And if there are no more questions on Mindego, Tommy, you got anything else to? Yeah.
Move on to the Chardonnay.
We will move on to the first of our 2 Chardonnays. The first will be Portola Springs, 2017.
Actually, sounds very cool being poured. Hopefully you guys can get that in your audio.
So Portola Springs is planted in 1982. So it makes it some of the little bit newer Chardonnay. I think it's the youngest Chardonnay vineyard here at the winery, but still quite getting up there in age, probably in the middle-aged. This is unique. It's a very steep hillside vineyard, and this soil is distinct at the top of our property because most of this is basalt or a volcanic origin. And I think it really comes through in the wine. This is always, I think, the most mineral, the Chardonnay with the most kind of verve. It's just got this like laser-like acidity. The fruit character is sort of the least Californian, you might say. It definitely veers into the citrus end of things. This is, decidedly not your grandmother's Chardonnay, right? The quote unquote stereotypical California Chardonnay. I always think that Portola Springs, even though it has all this electricity, it still drinks quite well in its youth. Just again, it kind of has just enough of that California fruit that it's from the Santa Cruz Mountains, but no excess weight, no kind of heavy kind of plodding character. It's just really, really electric to me. Tommy, what do you think about Portola?
So this is the first time that I've tried this wine, actually, since shortly after bottling, and people have heard me say this before, so I apologize for that. But in the old days, Portola Springs was consistently my favorite of our single vineyard Chardonnays. These days, that's not always the case. It kind of, depending on the situation and depending on the vintage, that certainly I could talk about Langley with just as much sort of passion as the Portola Springs, but 17 is to me, I mean, we'll see, and we'll eventually taste all the 17 single vineyards together. But this wine has that distinct, extreme Portola Springs austerity that I kind of remember maybe from the old days relative to Langley and Damiana. So, I mean, Chardonnay gets short shrift so much of the time, and it's so unfortunate that there's more good Pinot Noir, for better or worse, and for us it might be for worse, but there's more good Pinot Noir in California than anybody knows what to do with. I mean, I wish it weren't true, but there's good Pinot Noir a lot of places now. Chardonnay, I don't believe that's the case as much, and it may be that it has more specific growing requirements, climatically or whatever it is, but the Santa Cruz Mountains is between us and Mindego and Mount Eden and a few other producers, Reese I should mention, but the Chardonnay in the Santa Cruz Mountains, I think, needs more notoriety. We are killing it with Chardonnay in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and this wine I'm absolutely loving. Like I said, I haven't tried it since shortly after bottling.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about how happy I am about the entire 17 vintage for Chardonnay. The wines are really just across the board quite pleasant. So I encourage you to stock up on 17 for a Chard vintage. I think the wines are just awesome. We've done a few of these tastings. We're doing a Zoom tasting every Friday. For anybody, not just club members, we're choosing 2 different wines, and we've tasted through some of the 17 Chardonnays at those tastings as well, and the wines have just been, across the board spectacular. If there are no other questions about the 17 Portola, we'll move on to a brand new wine for us. This is hard to fit into the screen here. Anna Cristina's Block, Langley Hill Vineyard Chardonnay, 2017. There are just 2 barrels of this made, so under 50 cases from our Langley Hill Vineyard.
So we've never done a block Chardonnay before. We've done the 2 Rapley blocks. They used to be called M block and B block, and now we call them Henry's block and Jim. Henry and Jimmy are my kids. We have which is my brother Patrick's son. My brother Pat really kind of opened our eyes to Nebbiolo. And then we have Will, the Pinot Noir from down at Gist, and it's named after the cabin at the foot of the vineyard where my brother used to live and where his son Will was born, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a thing going on about the grandkids, you know, third generation Fogarty's getting blocks or vineyards or cuvées named after them. And Anna was the first grandkid born, and we had never named a wine after her, which is totally criminal and injustice. And we wanted to do a block Chardonnay, and Langley Hill is a beautiful vineyard. There's a lot going on in that vineyard. Part of the vineyard ripens really nicely and consistently. Part of the vineyard is hard to ripen, but it has this beautiful acidity. I'll let Nathan tell you about kind of how we came up with the components from that vineyard that are in this wine. But that's kind of how we ended up with it and how we named it. And again, like, I'm glad we started with 17, because as Nathan mentioned, 17 is a shocking vintage for Chardonnay. I mean, the quality is in my opinion, I mean, they're some of the nicest Chardonnays I've ever had. They're wonderful.
The Anna Cristina's is a special section of Langley Hill. And we kind of chose it because I think it really kind of demonstrates the qualities that we appreciate best in Langley Hill. And that's sort of this yin and yang of California richness, but, you know, vibrancy and structure. I think this wine will age quite well. In certain years, the Chardonnays from this property can really develop over quite a, you know, kind of a shockingly long amount of time. Paul asked, what was the winemaking process involved with Portola? Is it the same with the other Chardonnays? And I would say, yeah, all the Chardonnays are more or less made the same. They're whole bunch or whole cluster pressed into tank. Then the juice goes straight to barrel. The wine ferments naturally in barrel, then undergoes malolactic in barrel. And then usually after a year plus or minus, the wines go to stainless steel for 4 6 months, kind of depending on the year. And so the wine, I like to say, like during the fermentation and aging in barrel, the wine kind of breathes and gets some width, and then we sort of shape the wine at the end with stainless steel and kind of focus it and give it kind of the vibrancy and verve that we like. And I think this wine particularly shows that it has that really kind of expansive attack in the front, but really tightens up nicely on the finish, and it's really kind of, you know, showing bright acidity, kind of like citrus oil. And it almost has like a floral or kind of mint, like fresh mint character on the nose. It's shown really well, but I think this wine, like I said before, will age quite well. Yeah, pretty fun wine to introduce in 17. You know, we talked about doing this for a few years, and 17 just really seemed like the right vintage. And this is probably not a wine we'll make every vintage. We really want the quality to be, you know, exceptional, and there to be distinction between this block and sort of the regular, quote unquote, regular Langley Hill bottling. I think both of the wines are quite stunning, but this wine has a really kind of special, unique character to it.
There was a question about
the tasting order, which we kind of anticipated, or at least Duchamp did. We do the Pinot. I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule, but we tasted the Pinot Noirs first. That's kind of how I usually like to do it. I think Nathan agrees. I'll let him weigh in on it. But you know, imagine tasting these Chardonnays, especially before the Pinot Noirs. It simply wouldn't work. I mean, the Chardonnays are so electric, so aggressive. I mean, I mean, I don't want to say the wines aren't like nuanced wines or don't have subtlety, but they're pretty aggro, and they're just so, like, I mean, they're blindingly intense with so much acidity. And Pinot Noir tends to be more nuanced wine, and I think, you know, we definitely saw that with these. I mean, both of those wines had so much complex sort of juxtaposition in there that you've got to do those before the Chardonnays. I mean, the Chardonnays are you know, they're like, I mean, it's like, you know, it's like lighting off a firecracker or something. It's just subtlety gets lost after something like that, to me. And to me, it's Nathan, I think, turned me onto this first, or I kind of noticed it traveling in other parts of the world tasting, but to me, it doesn't make sense to do really good Pinot Noir with a lot of subtlety and then really good Chardonnay afterwards. Again, it's subjective. It's my.
No, I think you hit the nail right in the head. I think we're going to wrap things up. We wanted to keep this short and sweet, just so you could get a chance to hear our thoughts on the new wines that you received. We'd like to thank you for supporting, the endeavors here, for all our hard work, farming, making the wines, getting them to your hands. In a perfect world, we wouldn't be doing this on Zoom. You would be here, and we could be sharing a glass together, but we'll sort of make do with what we have. We're hoping that in the the not too distant future, we can have small groups of people up here to visit. We are open for curbside pickup. If you are cruising through the area, you can call ahead. We'll have your order waiting. You can drive up, give a light beep on your horn, and we'll come out and throw the wine in your trunk. And yeah, we encourage you to try these new wine club releases. See what you like, and stock up on the bottles that you want to put in your cellar or that you want to enjoy over the next year. So with that, I'll say goodbye. Thank you. Tommy, you have any final thoughts?
Well, I'll just let me be decidedly unbashful about telling everybody that we would love you to buy more wine. Obviously, we're sort of like a one-winged duck here with not being able to have an open tasting room, not being able to do events. We're really reliant on our customers to show us if they love the wines by buying them. We appreciate everybody's support, and we ask for it to continue. The Anna Cristina Chardonnay, we have how much left, Duchan? There's a bit left. Not everybody got that wine in their distribution and their shipment, so there is some left if anybody's interested in trying it. And again, thanks to everybody very much, and hopefully we'll see you on the Friday tastings as well. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you soon.